Hi, everybody. Welcome to Still Podcast. My name is Sierra, and introducing now a special guest, my mom.
Hey.
Brandon is on a small hiatus, and so to keep the content flowing, I know we've been talking about doing this for a long time. Decided to bring my mom on because, as you all know, I used to be an actor, and that meant I was homeschooled as a kid. And so, not only was she my mom, but she was my primary teacher and advocate and a lot of things over the years. So I think it would be really cool if we walked through that pathway together and we tackled homeschooling from the inside. What was it was like for her as well as for me, but as a parent and also as just an adult individual trying to navigate how to go back all the way through the years of schooling, homeschooling, trying through all the different types of schools that we did because I did everything in the book and how that's changed over time, because we homeschooled before it was cool kind of deal. I always say that because like COVID parents, they were forced to homeschool and it was rough. And I know like a lot of people didn't like doing it. And
Nope.
I think we could shed some interesting light on this whole subject. So
Yeah,
welcome, Mom.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
So let's start with why the hell do we start homeschooling? What was that main reason?
Well, that wasn't my plan.
Oh,
Believe it or not, the home district that we were in Orange County, California, did not have a professional children's situation. And you were in kindergarten. And legally in the state of California, I don't have to put you in kindergarten. I can keep you home until the first grade. Then I must enroll you in something. I have to show something. But as goodwill, I enrolled you in the local school in our neighborhood. And I thought it was, how nice would it be to walk you to school or to pick you up from school? And anyway, you were already an actor, already working. And when I went to enroll you, I could sign your work permit because you were in kindergarten. Once you were in first grade, I was not able to. I would have to take your work permit to the school district or the appointee of that district to sign to give you permission to work. That secured your enrollment, show that we were compliant. But in kindergarten, I could handle that. So I met with the principal of the school to say hello and to be nice and let her know that you were a professional child working. And even though I didn't have to enroll you until first grade, we really wanted to begin. And she got kind of nasty with me and said, well, if you think I'm going to sign your work permit and then let you have all kinds of absences and come out of school and stuff, you can think again. And you had only been there for 3 days. And I really liked your teacher and thought it was going to be really special. But then when she said that to me, I said, well, why would you do that? Because I'm going to comply. And she says, well, if your child misses too many school days, I am not going to sign that permit, and therefore she won't be able to work. And I said, that's all I need to know. Thank you so very much. I am now taking my child out of school. And she said, you'll regret it. And I said, not a stitch. And see you later. And I went to the door where you were, pulled you out, and we walked home. And I got on the internet and figured out where I could get you into some kind of guidance because I had no idea what the heck I was going to do. But your career was number one, and we had put too much together as a family to let some skanky principal tell me what she was going to do with my child. That's all I got to say.
Well, so wait, back it up, because for the audience, obviously, like I have no memory of this. I was little. I was 5.
I know.
Well, technically I was 4.5, I think, when I expressed interest, and then we were in the process for a little bit, and then remind me how old I was when I booked my first job.
You were 3.
Oh, I was 3? Oh shit, I forgot. Sorry. So no, when did I book my first job though? Not at 3.
Oh,
was it?
You were 5.
Yeah, 5. Okay. Yeah, I expressed interest when I was 3. And then I booked that healthcare commercial, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was at 5. Okay.
That was your first.
So
and then that particular agent did a no and double booked you on two things straight away. I had no idea what I was doing, and it was really scary. And so you were double booked for one day, and that was pretty insane. Pretty
Right.
insane.
So then you're navigating all this when I'm like 4, 5 years old. You
5.
get
Mhm.
a bet. Well, I'm just saying, like from the interest to try. Okay, like management, agency. What are we doing? Work, headshots. Like this, all of this is happening before I get into kindergarten, and then now you're having to deal with the school when I'm
Mhm.
5, and this principal already rubs you the wrong way straight out the bat when I haven't even had a day off of work. Right?
We hadn't even party fouled her.
Exactly.
She
Exactly.
was already laying it out like how it was going to roll. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry.
Right.
Mm-mm.
And so then you jumped in, and this is 2005.
Oh, don't even.
Josh wasn't even here yet. So
Nope.
what year was this? 2000
I
math.
can't remember.
9, 10, 11. No,
Three,
99, 2000,
2002.
1,
I
2.
don't know.
Yeah, 2003. So this is like we're in the internet era, but it's
Right.
not how we know it now. It's not
No, it
anywhere
was
near as connected and well
right.
sourced. And
Yep.
so we're technologically in a different decade. You're trying to figure all this shit out on the internet, trying to now were you looking into my let me back up. My first school was CHEP, right? That's the right one.
No, your first school was the public school in our neighborhood.
After that.
And then after that, it was CHEP.
Yeah. So when you were online trying to look for homeschooling programs,
Yes.
were you looking for like strict online, off the grid, where to get textbooks, charters? Like what was your mindset with that? How did you deal with that?
So my mindset was I wanted to call the shots. I wanted to work with a teacher. Um, let me back up. When I was in first grade, I was really, really ill for a while. And
Mm,
I had to have a teacher come into the house um, and work with me to meet the standards for the district at that time. And of course, that was arranged by my family. I was a minor and couldn't speak for myself, but I had to be kept home under doctor's orders. And
mhm,
so I was looking for something like that, where a
oh,
teacher would say, okay, here's your work assignments for this block of time, and we will get those completed, bring them back, and we'll see what we need to do from there. And if there's books and things like that. So that was the thing that was in the back of my mind. And so there was a community home education school project under the county of Orange that allowed
mhm,
me that kind of freedom. So I didn't want to have to report somewhere with you because I didn't know what we were going to do, because the priority was when Hollywood called, we had to go.
yeah,
And I didn't want to walk out of a classroom. I didn't want to walk into a classroom with you, with other students and parents, and then miss a phone call or say, sorry, got to go. That was a disruption. So I'd like to do things
right,
independently. And so CHEP fit that bill. And then we checked
yeah.
in once a month.
So
So
you were looking for fully at home. That way you could have control of the schedule. And
because I
something,
had no idea when you were going to be going,
yeah,
every day when we woke up, I didn't know. Usually by noon, if I didn't get a call, then we were home for the day and I knew what we were going to do. But in the mornings, we kept things a certain way
mhm,
because we did a few subjects because I had to get up and leave. So an
mhm,
art project wasn't done in the morning because if we were at a critical point on an art project where you needed to do something next and we had to leave, I couldn't do that. So usually they would reach out to me by 10 in that morning if you were going to
mhm.
be going somewhere, and sides would be sent to me. And
Sides are what for people who don't know?
sorry, sides would be a portion of a script, like a monologue or a dialogue that you would have to memorize. And your appointments usually ran from anywhere from 2 to 6 p.m. in LA. So by 10 o'clock, if there were any kind of anything that we needed to know, we would have that monologue or quick dialogue, which was probably under 10 sentences, one way or the other.
Yeah.
And we'd have to have those memorized, and we'd have to
Mhm,
have you dressed and your hair done in a certain way, depending on what it was that we were doing.
right.
And on the road, we were on the road by noon and ready to go. So that's
Mhm.
how it went. So we would do subjects. If we missed the afternoon on that particular day, there was always Saturday. There was always
Yeah.
Sunday to make up. The point was, once a month, I checked in with the schools, and with the school, I should say. And if the school month represented 20 days, I needed to have 20 pieces of arithmetic papers, 20 pieces of spelling, 20 pieces of some sort of literature, or any, in each subject that I can show and the teachers could look at. And that was how they took attendance. And their attendance was reimbursed by the state of California because it was under the county. Community Home Education Program, CHEP, was an independent study program, an ISP. And so therefore they got their funding through the state of California. And the beauty of that is the months wasn't like a school month traditional, like you would go Monday through Friday and Saturdays and Sundays off. It wasn't always like that. If you counted up the days in a month, because you had Saturdays and Sundays off, it wasn't always a full 28 or 30 days or 31 days because of holidays and weekends. So our school month was representative of all of the cumulative days that you could go to school. So it ranged anywhere from 19 to 22 days, depending on the size of the month. And with that, I had to produce that many days. And that is how they took their attendance. And that is how they got paid. And of course, we had support. We had textbooks and some consumables. And we also had a master teacher that would follow you from kindergarten through 8th grade if we stuck with that. So every year you had the same teacher with me, and she taught me how to teach you. And she also taught you if there were issues, like if I wasn't getting a concept across to you in some way, I could bring you in and Miss Laura could talk with you. And
Yeah.
I would watch Miss Laura and I would see how she would integrate the concepts, and I would learn to teach by watching the master teacher. And then the light bulbs would come on for you. And then we could, continue with whatever it is that we were building on with the curriculum.
I want to clarify one thing that you said that was super important. You brushed over it like it was nothing. You said that I had access to a master teacher who taught me if I needed help and also taught you how to teach.
Mhm.
That's not correct. I don't think part of her job was to teach you how to teach, but you were an extremely attentive parent who supported me in every way. And so naturally, you watched her and you did your best to absorb what she was doing
Yeah,
and
I
mimic it,
mean,
which, well, it
it's a
would make home life for you easier because you would see what her methods did. And then if you could just embody that and give it, then we don't have to leave the house. We don't have to make an appointment with her. We don't have to go in and da, 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 da. It's
right,
easier if you did that. But
right.
I make a point to say that because when I was doing my own private tutoring, as I was tutoring,
Mhm.
before, like when I got out of the Navy, I was working in escrow and I did tutoring on the side for math. When I would go to these families' homes, because I would drive there and tutor their children, the parents couldn't be more checked out. Like I even had parents just completely berating their own children, telling me how stupid and how inattentive, ADHD, but like berating their children in front of me. And
Yeah,
these parents could not be bothered to give a shit in their kid's life. They wanted to bring in a tutor and then be still at the drop of a hat, like dig on their own child in front of me. Like that was okay. And you did not have to do that as a parent. That was like above and beyond going and looking at that, mimicking and bringing that home. She didn't teach you. You chose to pay attention, and that's important. I want to point that out.
well, thank you. That's a wow. Oh, thank you.
But
Well,
it's still
it's
relevant now, you know?
well, you know, I could say to every parent out there, when you have a child, you look forward to their firsts, the first time they roll over, the first time they can sit up by themselves, and so forth. And so I had all your first and all your brothers first. I taught you how to read. I taught you how to write, and all of these things. But sometimes, if the parent had a poor experience in school, and I can tell you, I was one of those parents. I didn't have positive. I didn't like my education in the public school districts in Huntington Beach and Fountain Valley. Didn't like them. So Orange County, California is not all that. Let me just say, yeah.
Say it again for the people in the back. No.
So my education was horrible. And I really, my greatest fear in having your first is that I would create potholes in your education. And that's something I didn't want to do because I had a lot of potholes in mine. And so that was the driving force. I wanted you to understand the who, what, when, how, and why, and really feel confident. And so that was a huge burden to carry, but I chose to carry that burden because you wanted to work in Hollywood. And if this is what's going to be, if we're going to do this and be all in 100% and grab that brass ring of success in Hollywood, I better daggum well make sure that my child can read and write and add 1 and 1 makes 2, because acting is a very short-lived fuse. And somewhere you're left down the road with a big pot full of nothing. And I didn't know how long it was going to, be for you. I really didn't.
Yeah.
So I didn't want you entering public school or entering your adulthood and then you can't write a check. You don't know how to write your name. You can't read fluently. That was a biggest thing ever. And I'm a writer instinctively. And the fact that oh my gosh, she can't write. No, not my child.
Yeah. We battled about that a lot. I do remember I hated writing so much when I was a kid. It was horrible. But she made me do it and I'm better for it. And I don't regret that at all. Like that, you made the right choices. Kids are stubborn, but whatever. Going back, because you were about to touch on it, going back to the curriculum and the potholes and stuff. So first I was at CHEP, and I do know that you experienced issues getting hold of curriculum, fighting with the teachers in there a little bit with, well, this history textbook is garbage. Why are you giving this to the kids? I want this one, or can I do that one? Or how did that, pick a subject if there's one in particular that speaks to you, but how did the curriculum work with CHEP?
So just like when you're in public school, and you arrange yourself to show up in the fall and they give you your tablets with everything downloaded, back in the day when you were in CHEP and when I was in school, we got our textbooks. You'd show up and you'd have 15 books and all the consumables and you'd walk out the door going, holy crap, so that's kind of where it started. So in your 3rd grade year, for whatever reason, the state of California decided it was going to change the history they call it social studies, or they did, when you were in 3rd grade. And for me in my life in elementary school, it was also called social studies, but they decided they were going to change the whole deal with social studies. And they came out with a new textbook. And they also came out with a whole new curriculum. And inside that textbook was everything that the state of California wanted a 3rd grader to learn. And when I looked at it, I was disgusted. I sat down and one afternoon and read the whole textbook and said, no, this is not acceptable.
How many pages?
Probably 300. So, but there's a lot of pictures. It was a 3rd grade book.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not a genius.
But that's still, even if it's a 300-page picture book with paragraphs underneath, because I remember.
Oh, there was always, discussion questions, arts and crafts and everything to do. But it was a merging of curriculum that was starting to happen. And so I didn't really care for that, but there was no substance to it. Like there was one chapter devoted to Hollywood, and I was irritated because I don't really give a shit about my 3rd grader learning about Hollywood. Well, first of all, you were in Hollywood, you were already working in Hollywood, and I really didn't want to hear anything more about Hollywood. So needless to say, we skipped that chapter. And I asked Miss Laura if I could bring in extra curriculum to enrich, and her words of encouragement were, yes, you can enrich, but I need to see what it is first. So that I can know if I can assign credit. And credit meant obviously for your grade, even though I was doing the report card, she had to approve it. And then also it had to count for a work day so that the school could get paid.
Yeah, so
Because
there's a bit of an
remember,
incentive there, yeah.
that was the attendance situation.
Mhm,
So, and she approved everything that I brought in because it was of substance. And I asked her, I said, why are we having such choppy crap in a textbook? And one of the things she told me, which I've never forgotten, was that there's a board of people at the state of
mhm,
California that makes decisions for mathematics, for literature, for history, and everything in between for each subject. This is what she told me. And they decide what belongs in a textbook. And they
mhm,
might reach out to Macmillan or Pearson or some of these big textbook folks and say, this is
mhm.
what we're looking at. And then they come back with it. And she says, the problem is they never take anything out. They just keep adding stuff and adding stuff.
Oh,
And then the books actually kind of split, and certain districts will get textbooks that might be relevant to various things and under the guise of social studies. And then other districts get this. So there isn't one textbook that the state of California uses. They offer a selection
mhm,
of social studies books or what's on a tablet for each school
right,
district and school board to vote on.
right, which
So
is
each
that's
school
yeah.
board can look at it and say, oh, yes, I want one packed with DEI. Yes. Oops.
No, you're good.
No, I'm kidding.
No, facts, right? Uh,
I don't want to mention
well
the Holocaust.
oh, yeah. Was the Holocaust in my textbook?
Not in third grade.
Not in
Not
3rd
in
grade.
third
When
grade. Not in any textbook. That's why you read
mm,
about the Holocaust in separate books, like
yeah,
the Diary of Anne
mhm,
Frank.
yep.
That's why I
So
insisted that you read that.
and I remember fighting you about that because it seemed boring and
Mhm.
I didn't understand it because the format for those of you who haven't read it, it's a diary format. You're reading entries. And so I didn't
Mhm.
quite understand what I was reading at first, whatever
Right.
grade I was in. It was, like, not quite clear to me.
Mhm.
And so I fought you a lot on that. I remember that. But anyway, I ended up actually liking it towards the end, which is ironic,
You did.
liking it as much as you could like that book. Um, I understood the value of it, let's put it that way.
Mhm.
Um, so what let's stick to CHEP. How many years was I in CHEP, by the way? First
Through the
through
seventh
4th?
grade year.
7th grade year. So I was
Mhm.
like 11. No, that's not right because I also went to a private school for a little bit, right? What was the
Well,
timeline on that private school? Let's jump into the
so
timeline there.
yeah, and so I have to. I asked Miss Laura at CHEP, and she was
Mhm,
such an amazing woman, if we could step away and
mhm,
try for 1 quarter a private Lutheran school. And there
mhm,
was an opportunity because of connections to get a discount on tuition.
mhm,
And it was hard because um, your brother being young and
mhm.
always running to Hollywood, it was getting the best of me
Like
a little bit,
toddler
trying to
age. Yeah.
manage the age difference in two different
Mhm,
curriculums and stuff. And I thought it might be good for you to get out of the house and get with
mhm,
other children. And one thing that I didn't like about that particular private school was that the third grade teacher that I had you in the fall, you were there 1 month and she came to school intoxicated. And I had to teach that class the whole day because I didn't have anybody.
wait, I don't remember that at all. You taught
I
the
know,
class?
and I'm so
What?
glad.
What?
I walked in and I saw that she was intoxicated, and I walked out, went to the office, reported what I saw, and somebody from the office pulled me aside, and I said, if you don't remove her, I'm going to bring in the authorities. And they said, we have
Mm,
nobody to teach. And I said, I can teach. And they said, would you mind subbing? I said, I will do it for 1 day. And
mm.
it was a Friday. And so that's the way it went. So for the whole class, that whole day, they removed her and I taught a bunch of third graders. So,
Whoa.
and
I don't.
After
That's
that,
so
we went right back to CHEP
mm. Yeah, because
because
not only she might have been intoxicated on something or other, but I seem to remember that she was abusing opioids possibly at the time. Is
she
that
was
what came
what?
out later? Was she abusing opioids at the time?
Yeah.
Was that
And that
yeah,
came out,
okay.
but at the time you can't tell
Right.
because she
Yeah, yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of slurring and it was awful.
Yeah, so
So, but I was like,
that's
I am not
crazy.
leaving my child. And other parents would just be dropping their kids off and because they had to go to work. I didn't have
Mhm.
to go to work. And so I actually called your grandmother and she came and picked
Mm.
Joshua up because I had a stroller, you
Yeah.
know, and yeah, that's how it went.
That's an insane and for the audience, again, like, I have no recollection of that. I didn't
It's
know
good
that
that
was
you didn't.
come up. I'm sure you did fine, but again, my god, what a selfless moment to what parent, like you just said, most of them have to go to work. What parent, even if it's like a stay-at-home mom, comes in, drops their kid off, but has the wherewithal to notice that the teacher's not all there, and then is like, "Oh, let me just sub." No one does that. Who does that?
Thanks. Well,
You know?
it,
Like, that's a I mean, maybe it happens. I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen, I don't know, but that's definitely a
well, the
it's not for
principal in
nothing.
that, yeah, well, the principal in that school was kind enough. She had an outline
Mhm.
for subs,
Oh, good.
and it was a very scanty outline, but the books were there, and there was an
Mhm.
outline, and I didn't mind being in front of a bunch of little kids.
Yeah, because
And
you raise kids your whole life, so
the thing about, yeah, but you had some people tell you that I was scary. So,
yeah, well,
your
that's fair.
mom's scary, Sierra.
My mom don't take no bullshit. That's what it
No.
is.
Mm-mm.
Uh, that's so funny. I love that. I love that I'm reliving this with you right now on camera. That's great. Um, okay, so I did literally 1 month at that school with a
Yep.
wild, addicted teacher. You pulled me out, you brought me back into CHEP, and
Yep.
then I remember you said till 7th grade year, which is like what, 11 or 12? I can't remember, something like that.
Hmm.
And then that was like the first initial chunk of my young adolescent life. And so, what were some concerns that you had besides just the curriculum? Like, what were some major concerns that you had about me, either developmentally, socially, anything in that realm with regard to homeschooling?
Well, you enjoyed being home, it seemed, because there were freedoms. When we weren't running to Hollywood,
Hmm.
I never put a bell schedule together, like a strict bell schedule. So, at 11 o'clock, if you're in your jammies and Josh is in his jammies and you guys want to play and do art for an hour before we start school, that was always something that we could do. Or,
Hmm.
um, you know, interject the story if it's raining, and then we would go outside and rescue earthworms and throw them
Right.
on the grass
And then that
because
was
they
a
were
little science
drowning
lesson.
in the
Yeah.
gutters.
Right. Hmm.
But so you enjoyed those things, but I kind of thought it was, sorry, I digressed there, but
No, you're good. We
it
could
was
turn
good
that
for
into a
you.
science lesson, though, you know?
Well, we did.
Yeah.
But I thought it was good for you to be around some peers that weren't Hollywood kids and
Yeah.
that were just kids that didn't have any connection,
Hmm.
because most of our time now was spent with other families that were professional,
Hmm.
and it was just very difficult. There was no reality in it. And I
Yeah.
thought other kids your age, who were going through whatever that was in that time of their life, I thought you should be about that too. But I still wanted that freedom. And so there was a hybrid school that did certain subjects in the classroom
Hmm.
and then certain subjects at home. And so I thought that would be kind of cool. And it would also prepare you potentially for college, because we'd have to report to a campus. I'd
Hmm.
be dropping you off because obviously you wouldn't be driving, and
Hmm.
because you were young, and you would have to just wander in on your own into that classroom environment and survive. figure out where you're going to sit, figure out who you liked, who you didn't like, listen to a teacher that wasn't me, absorb and learn from
Right.
that person, and try to make sense out of the textbooks and the standards that that teacher had for you, in that environment with other kids talking and being goofballs and whatever that would come along.
Mhm.
Um, and then go home and do homework and have an expectation, that that teacher is going to expect you to return next week with completed tasks, and you'd have
Mhm.
to, and I had no control over it. There was no
Mhm.
reasoning with me. There was no excuses. If you didn't do the work, you didn't get the credit, and you get a big fat zero, and you'd have to
Mhm.
learn how to take a test in an environment with other people. And I know that's, some people don't test well. And I was really
Yeah.
concerned about that, because there was no, uh, at home, I can make the house quiet. You can go on the dining room table, or you can go in the living room where you needed to and take a test. And
Right.
that's not how life is. So
Yeah.
I thought this might be good for a while.
So to be clear, what school was that? I think I know what you're talking about, but which one
I
was
can't
that?
say the name.
It was if I'm not mistaken, wasn't I a freshman going into that school though?
No, I'm preferring not to say the name.
I
It
understand. But wasn't I a freshman going into that school?
No.
No, there's
You
another
were
one
you
that I'm
were
just forgetting.
you were in eighth grade, something you did junior high there, and then I took
Was
you off
it was it charter?
grid. I
Hmm.
took you
I
off
just
grid. You went
hmm.
through high school with me.
Oh, off grid. I'm sorry, I can't remember. It's so blurred for me, all this stuff
You
in
did
life.
you
So,
did the portion of you did seventh and eighth grade in that school, um,
mhm.
and it was good. I didn't mind it, but
Okay.
it was just something that, the end result was you weren't going to go to a 4-year college right out of,
Yeah.
and I already knew that. And see, that's the other thing. A lot of parents think that kids have to go right out of their senior year into a 4-year
Mhm.
college. And I didn't want that for you. Period.
Mhm.
I don't care how smart or scatterbrained or
Whatever.
anybody. I had that experience. I just think it was stupid. It's a waste of money. Um, I think that
Love it.
I think that a JC is more than adequate. Now, if your kid is driven and they really, really, really want a certain thing, that's a whole different ball game. But if your child is a teenager and they don't know, that's okay if they don't know, and let them just screw up at a JC level. The
Yeah.
classes are cheaper. There's not as much, um, pressure.
Mhm.
A university campus is a big deal. And a lot of kids, they think they want something. And then, like 2 years into it, they're like, this isn't what I want. So then they end up taking classes and paying through the nose and getting in debt for something that they don't want. And maybe
Mhm.
not all of those credits will transfer over. I don't know, because,
Mhm.
it depends on,
Depends
if
on
you
the
start out a
state and
music
the
major and then you want to go into some kind of science, you're going from
yeah.
liberal to not, so it's like, and so it's just important that a person find their feet in a JC, I think, and then they can
Yeah.
transfer. Now you got to choose your JCs wisely.
Of
College,
course.
all junior college campuses are not equal. So I put you into a junior college that transferred into the, California university systems without any
Mhm.
issues. And
That's smart.
I just thought, let's start here, and let's get rid of your general education.
Mhm.
So, and get that out of the way, and then you can focus later on what you really think you want to do. So knowing that, we went around a long bush to say, but knowing that I didn't have that pressure,
Mhm.
I didn't care. Like if you were off grid with me, or
Mhm.
you were in CHEP, or you were in that junior high institution that I put you in,
Mhm.
um, and you didn't have the best grades or whatever, it doesn't matter, because for you, you were going to take the GED.
Yeah, right.
I
That's a
didn't
good
care.
perspective shift.
And I
Mm.
wasn't ashamed of a GED. That was your fate, because you were going to graduate from me, and then you're
Mhm.
going to take a GED. And Not the high school equivalency, because in California that's not thorough enough. I wanted you to have the
Yeah,
GED. And I knew that
HSE
if you
and
were going to go into
GED.
the armed services or civil service, if you were going to go into a 4 year, I knew the GED was more than acceptable. Or even if you were
Mhm,
going to go into a trade situation, trade school, it would be more than acceptable. So the pressure was off.
mhm.
Whereas in high school, you get the crap beat out of you. You got to get this grade. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to get this into your transcript if you're going to go to a 4 year, and you have to apply by this date and this time and da 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 da. I didn't want any of that for you. So
Not
the
to
idea
mention,
was to learn. I'm sorry.
well, something that people probably think is weird is, like, I didn't take, I don't even know the difference between, like, SAT, ACT. I don't know what
Yeah,
the difference is, but
you didn't need that either.
I don't take any of that. I got
Nope.
accepted into a junior college when I was, 15 and a half without those tests. People make such a big deal about that as far as, like, well, you're not accomplished in your high school era if you didn't take the SAT or whatever. How do you know how smart you are, or what? There was always such social calamity around these tests that I never understood when I started growing up, and
Because
where yeah.
because 4 year universities want those
Mhm,
markers. But if you will accept a GED
mhm,
and just say, this is my fate, and I'm going to take this GED and I'm going to put a period to the end of that sentence and go into my next level of
mhm.
adulthood, you're going to be fine. But they want the SAT and the ACT and all these other things because they want to somehow classify their students and prioritize them based on those scores and a transcript with weighted grades. Okay, if you are 12 and you say, Mom, I want to be a doctor, that's what you're going to have to do. You're just going to
Yeah,
have to do that.
mhm.
If you want to be a dentist, if you want to be a lawyer, you're going to have to do that.
Yeah, there's certain pathways. Well,
Um,
so to bring it all the way back, I think I
yeah.
asked you what your concerns were, and through all of that, I heard adaptability was a big one.
Mhm.
You wanted to make sure that I was able to adapt and be flexible in life, and do things
Right.
in less than ideal situations, make sure I could test well, that I had the skills enough to be independent, and that I wasn't codependent on you, or I wasn't there wasn't any learned helplessness, like stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that was a major concern for sure. And then the other one was making sure that I was on a track to that I so that I could have options, which is why you decided to go the GED route so that I could do whatever I chose, you know.
Mhm.
So making sure I had the options, you provided the flexibility and the pathway, and then making sure I was adaptable. So those are, I think that was the three major takeaways that I heard.
When you were done with Hollywood, I didn't know if you wanted to be a police officer. I didn't know if you
Mhm,
wanted to be a firefighter. I didn't know if you wanted to go into the armed services. I didn't know if you wanted to be a teacher. I didn't know anything in which
mhm.
way you were going to go, but I knew that with a GED, you could start in any one of those places and it would be fine. In fact, I would say, some people would argue, because there's a whole ideology about going directly into a 4 year university. And I have no illusions about the value that parents are not getting in paying for their people, their children, to go into a 4 year. But
Right.
I know that some people can have very, very good careers in engineering or as a dentist, any one of those careers, and start out at a junior college. I
Mhm.
know, I know. It's just a matter of breaking the mold and saying it's okay. You got to break the
Right.
mold and say it's okay. There's a lot of famous people that who had amazing pathways and they didn't just go right into Stanford out of a high school.
Mhm.
And I wanted to take some of those out of the box experiences with you. And I was, maybe that was selfish on my part. I don't know. Um,
If it was, I don't regret it. It was, I mean, to put this in perspective for the audience, remind me, correct me if I'm wrong. I think I left acting finally when I was 12. Is that right?
yes,
Okay, so that's
by your
whatever.
own choice, you were
Yeah.
you were done. And I said, if you when you're
Mhm.
done, you're done.
The Smurfs killed my career. That
I
stupid
wanted you to
movie.
say that. I didn't want to say that.
Yeah, I know. That's another story for later. But yeah, that live action movie, The Smurfs, that came out in 2000, sometime after 2008,
Let
whenever
it
year
go.
that is. Yeah, that movie killed my career. But anyway, that was the rise of like virtual auditioning. Oh my god, camcorders, I can't. Anyway, so much. But what was I gonna say? Oh, so when I was 12, I stepped away from acting of my own accord, and then I was about to be in junior high school age stuff, and then eventually transitioning to high school. I don't know what year it is when you're 15. Is that sophomore year?
Yeah, freshman turning
Yeah.
sophomore.
So by the time I was that age, 15 and a half or so, that's when I applied to the junior college, which is a little unheard of. Like most people are like, whoa, what the hell when I say that. And it's because of that out of the box perspective that you gave, because I was able to cram basically. I still remember this conversation to this day. I was like, why do people have to go through 4 years of high school? How much curriculum is there? Like, is there that much that you have to know? Does it take that long? Like, is there so much papers and all the things you have to do, all the stuff you have to learn? Does it take 4 years to like learn all this stuff? And you were like, well, oh, actually, I don't know what you said, but basically we figured it out. The answer was no. And I figured that if I could crunch high school into 2 years, then I would be 2 years ahead of the game. And so, as much as this was also spurred by you, a lot of it was me too. I remember being like, I don't want to start my life when I'm 30 or something. I want to be hitting the ground running at like 18, 19. There was a financial element to it. I remember wanting to just be ahead of the curve all the time in life. I don't know why. I was just driven, I guess. But so that's what we did though. I crammed high school into 2 years, and then it was only because that out of the box structure that I was able to do that, and then you put me into the right JC. I ended up not taking advantage of anything after that. We went into the military after that, but it doesn't matter. Like, the fact of the matter is without that, perspective that you gave, I may or may not have even asked the questions like, "Why do we have to do it this way? Why does it have to," you know? So it was a joint effort for sure,
Hmm.
and it was really cool.
Well, but I always told you that if you didn't pass something, it was my fault. It's on me.
Mm,
It,
somewhat, yeah.
it's your D's or F's, not that you got any, but if you didn't do something by their grades standards,
Mhm.
that was me. Wasn't your failure, your lack of, had nothing to do with your intelligence. It was me. It was my report card. Your report cards were my report cards. Very simply. And I always felt
Well,
that way.
I wanna put that in perspective, though, because no one grew up in our household. That's not to say that you didn't chew me out if I was being lazy. So I wanna be clear, this was not a mom living vicariously through her child,
Right.
like, "Your report card is mine." Like, no, what she's getting at, I think, is, at some, and this is what I mean, like coming at this perspective, like what was it like to homeschool as an adult individual who's been out of the school system for 20 something years at this point? What's it like to go back through first, second, third, fourth, all the way through? Go back and immerse yourself in these subjects and see how much you remember. So, and I even went through that as a tutor. I was 24 when I was tutoring, I think. And that was less time than you away from the school system, and I already forgot a lot of like 5th, 6th grade math, and I was enough to relearn. It was quick, but I still forgot it, you know? Like, there's something to be said about that, and so when you say that your report card my report card was yours, it was
It was a reflection of my ability to
to teach.
instill
Yes.
some kind of knowledge.
Mhm.
Your abilities fell to me,
Right.
you know.
But then if I wasn't towing the line, you would reinforce the
Oh.
standard, of course. Like,
Hmm.
that was always the case. It was never There was no coddling here. I
No.
remember lots of arguments about that. I just wanted to make that clear for the audience because I get defensive about my mom.
No,
But,
because you can't say my dog ate my paper because I would watch that dog eat that paper
right, because it was in the house.
because it
Yeah,
was in the
no,
house.
everything was in the house. So let's pivot away from the curriculum and the school aspect for a little bit. Let's dig into when you reunited with your band group in whatever year that was. My God, I think I was like 9 or 10, something like that.
Yeah,
And
2009 or 10 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. You reunited with your high school buds from band, and all of you had kids by that point,
Mhm,
and you started going around, and we would do pool parties over there at this guy's house because he had a cool pool or whatever, and there'd be
mhm.
stuff that we hosted and yada yada, whatever.
Yep.
Everyone had a good time, but you
Mhm,
got a lot of flack for homeschooling. What
mhm.
what were the things that they would say to you?
That my children wouldn't be able to socialize properly, that they wouldn't be able to process reality because I was protecting them, that there was no way that I could meet your educational needs at every aspect, but
Mm,
we did.
yeah. And they
I
said
didn't go
that.
get my nails done. I didn't go out to lunch with the ladies.
Oh,
I was with my children 24/7. And yeah, I wouldn't
yeah,
have
talk
had it
about
any other
that.
way. Huh?
Talk about that, because they, oh my god, to the whole issue with COVID, all these parents, even now, even 5 years later, and homeschooling is on the rise because of the negative things going on in the school systems now. But even then, people who have to homeschool by choice when there's a day off randomly for like a cold day, or if there's a holiday, but they're going to do like online something, or whatever the case
Mhm.
is, parents can't stand to be with their kids.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
They shouldn't have made them then.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Toast
No,
to that.
you're my child. I grew you in my
Mhm,
body. I birthed you, and it's it's a joy for me to be a mom. And did you piss me off? Absolutely. Um, yeah. Did I want to pull the door off of your bedroom and tell you to,
mhm.
deal with it? You bet. And I know I told you to F off a couple of times too. So
But like at
I
at
was a
any point,
Medea. That was what you and your brother think. You guys teased me and said that I was Medea. Okay, then don't pull the chain. That's what I'm gonna say. Don't pull that chain.
mhm.
I'm not
But
afraid. See, no, let me just say the
go ahead.
problem with today's parents, in my opinion, is that they're afraid to upset their child. They're
Mm,
afraid that their child's going to hate them. I don't care. It's not my job to make you like me. Okay. My job is to educate you. My job is to make sure you are safe, you are well fed, that you
mm,
have what you need. And of course, my job is to love you because you're my child. But
mhm.
I don't care if you don't like me. You're going to do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it. And what? Flashbacks.
Yeah. Mhm. Absolutely.
And that's the problem with parents today. Oh, little Azure, he's going to have a problem if I tell him no. No. The answer is no. You're going to tell him no. So
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
and if your
Even
child isn't
oh,
thriving in an environment, it's on you as a parent to figure out why. It is not the school's responsibility. It is not the dojo's responsibility. It is not the studio's responsibility where your child takes music lessons or vocal lessons. It's not, it's the parent.
mhm,
So, and if you can't figure out what's up with your kid, then you grab your child and you be their best advocate and you go fight through whatever it is that is in them and you sort it.
mhm,
And if a doctor or a therapist isn't doing it, you make another one look just like them until you figure it out. You just don't stop. That life needs to flourish. That life that you created and grew needs to be able to grow, needs to be
mhm,
able to hold their own in the world. And they've got from birth to age 18. And I will tell you the scariest moments in my life weren't during birth or whether I was going to miscarry, if I was eating right when I was pregnant or whatever. It wasn't when you all were 2. It wasn't when you were 10. It was when you turned 18 because I legally had no
mm,
legal power. I had nothing. If you screwed up, I could not do anything for you. When you were 16, If y'all made a
Mhm.
mistake, I could sort it with you. We could talk. I had some authority. When you're 18, that's it. You can still live with me. I'll still pay the rent on the house or the mortgage on the house. You'll still have food. But now I have no say.
Mhm.
Only you.
And I think that's what's gonna end up being the hardest part of these new generations of kids. Kind of the ones that are slightly younger than my brother right now. I think that's who I'm talking about mostly.
Mhm.
But I mean, he could be part of it too. Not him, but like his age could be part of it
Yeah,
too.
no, his
Um,
group definitely.
they're gonna be something else when they turn 18. That's gonna be
Mhm.
nuts. It'll be interesting to see, for sure. Um, I wanted to go back. So some of these protests you said, um,
Yeah, sorry, we got sidetracked.
yeah, no, it's all good. I'm just trying to think. So what are the direct combating thing? Like, so you mentioned, say your protest again. I forgot. I didn't write them down. My bad.
Oh, from my friends that you
Hmm.
wouldn't be socialized. You wouldn't be able
Okay.
to hold conversations with people, your peers.
So how did we combat that? What did we do?
Well, basically, you talked with the adults and they kind of figured out that you were
Oh,
socially okay.
oh, right. Yeah. No,
You had more common
that's true,
sense
actually.
than their own children. You were more like an adult than their own children. You
Yeah.
weren't rude. You knew your manners, um, but at the same time, um, one argument was, well, when you're in class or you're in band and you guys have arguments, you got to work it out with your bandmates or your schoolmates. You got to be able to work those things out.
Hmm.
Well, you didn't seem to have a problem marrying into the pool of children that we high schoolers that came back together and had our pool parties. You were playing with all the girls in the pool. And
Hmm.
if somebody was being rude, you would tell them, why are you being rude? And they'd be like, huh? You
That's
know?
funny.
So because you didn't have to, being homeschooled, you didn't live in judgment every single day like kids
Hmm.
do in elementary schools over what you wear,
Hmm.
how your hair was, what your speech was like, what your interests
Yeah.
were, if you liked a certain boy or didn't like a boy. Um, None of those things mattered. Didn't matter what color your socks were or how you laced your tennis shoes or what jewelry you were or were not wearing. None of that mattered. And so when somebody was really wrapped around the axle in a social group of your peers, and they were like, oh, that's not a brand that I know, or why is she not wearing XYZ? You didn't care. It didn't matter to you. You were freed from that. And so you'd be like, why is that a big deal? Who cares? Put on a pair of shorts.
Hmm.
Let's go. It not in those words exactly, but it didn't
Yeah. Yeah.
matter. You looked at them like they were smoking crack. And then they were like, oh,
That's so funny.
okay. But you weren't rude, but you were really curious as to why that mattered. And it was
Yeah.
kind of an intense look like, what is your problem? Why are you having this meltdown?
Hmm.
And they would be like, they didn't have answers because they were so trained in the ideology of this is how I have to respond. This is how I have to react because I'm in class all the time in school. And this is what we do. This is how
Right.
we bully. This is how we get bullied. And so you're just like, whatever. I don't live to dress. I dress to live.
Right. Quite true. Still true. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that was one. So, and I do remember socializing with the adults a lot more at the party because the kids were like boring. They didn't have anything to talk about
Yeah.
either. They were
Yeah.
chit chatting about themselves or they would want to like go do like, I don't, they were, it was all very clicky at the
Mhm.
parties
And
because
I'm sure that was hard.
that was fine. I didn't care, but I was just like, well, if you guys are gonna do that and exclude me, I'm bored. So let me go talk to the adults because they had
That's
something to
exactly what
say.
you did. If they
I
were doing
remember that.
something that you deemed stupid or irrelevant, you went on to the next thing.
Yeah, I remember that.
And soon as the adults watched you cope because they thought you weren't going to be able to cope in a play group. And as soon as they realized, oh, she's fine, they didn't that the wind of their sails was gone. They couldn't say anything because you were contented. You know, you
Yeah.
were doing whatever it is that you wanted to do in the moment, and you weren't like, Mama, she called me funny looking. You didn't
Whatever.
do that.
Mm,
There was none of that.
right.
So
Well, then I also to stay busy, because I had a look at chicken moment, but PE credit was also one of the things that we had to navigate doing homeschooling because they needed PE. I don't know what the requirements were for that. Maybe you could speak to that. But what ended up happening is you enrolled me in karate, and so that was how I started my journey in martial arts that I'm still doing now, which is nuts. Um, but yeah, I think that was the other aspect, the other leverage handle that you had with regard to getting me out there and socialize because I was in martial arts. That was a big one.
and you know what, karate was perfect because there's a lot of things. There's a lot of components to it. There is a curriculum. There is a standard within that curriculum that you have to maintain. You were required to wear a uniform, and it had to be a certain way. Um, and if components were missing, then there was consequences for that. Which, to be honest, that's the way it is in school from my point of view. If you
Mhm,
showed up to PE and you didn't dress out, there was a consequence for that. You know, you need tennis shoes of some sort to be able to play basketball or whatever you're doing in PE or you're running. Likewise, with karate, there was a curriculum and a uniform and standards within the curriculum and the uniform. And you needed to show up to be able to participate, to get anywhere. And it was based on your merit. It had nothing to do with anything else but what you put into it. So the burden fell on you. If you didn't participate in class, then you never grew. And
right,
so it was up to you solely, had nothing to do with me. Yes, I paid the bills. Yes, I drove you there. Yes, I waited in the parent area for you to get done, but you had to do that. And then the other thing I liked about it was there was social interaction, but there wasn't social. There was a time to talk, and there was not a time to talk. There
mhm,
was a time to be in someone's personal space and
mhm,
be
yeah,
controlled in that space. And then there was a time where you needed not to be in someone's space. You need to sit your butt and be quiet and learn and be ready to whatever sensei told you to do. And
mhm,
so um, there's a multitude of layers in taking martial arts: coordination, fitness, memorization,
yeah, for real.
muscle memory. There's a bunch. I don't can't go wrong. Um,
So well rounded.
and
Yeah,
it's expensive. Yes, it was really expensive, but it was worth every penny because it made you who you are today. And I
yeah,
didn't have anything
no
to do
joke.
with that. And that's the thing. I wanted separation, not because I was tired of you, because I sat
Hmm.
there through every class. I never left you. So,
Hmm.
but you needed to be, my whole thing was I didn't care whether there was socialization in it. I wanted you to function in a world without me
Hmm.
as your mother or me as your teacher. So you had other teachers in in the dojo that had requirements for you. And if you didn't meet their standards, they'd call you out. And
Hmm.
there's nothing I could do about that. And you were a minor at that point, but it was on you. I couldn't intervene and go, oh, but my little girl just got her feelings hurt. They'd be like, so she can do it again. And I
Oh,
never did that, for the
yeah.
record. But
No, no,
none
but
of that crap. None of that crap. So
I had a moment just now where it's like, man, I don't have enough fingers to count how many times I've had to have an interaction as a teacher, as sensei, an interaction with a parent, um, where the whatever took place between two kids was very banal and it was very normal for their age and there was nothing wrong with it. Um, was it ideal? Maybe not. Did anybody get hurt? No. It was just one of those things you have a duty to tell the parent what happened because that's a responsible thing to do as a teacher. And I've seen people leave over very, very small, trivial things that, I mean, if you were out in the real world, like that would, nothing would happen, you know?
mhm,
So I'm not going to give any details, but it's just, that's not the culture now.
yeah.
And I mean, it still happened back then too, to a certain extent. You had the helicopter parents, we saw those, growing up in karate, but it's so much more prevalent now. And so I think that
Saw that in
you,
Hollywood
you
too.
oh, way more in Hollywood than karate, actually. Oh, man, stories all day
Now,
for
I gotta
Hollywood.
interject something with your brother. He was
Oh,
in
please do.
martial arts,
Yeah.
just as much as you. But then he also had a love for baseball, and
Hmm.
because we were a late start in that, I had him tutored by someone who was a professional ball player, retired, to bring him
Hmm.
online and get him advanced. And then when we started to go to the games, um, one of the things, and I attribute this to being independent and at home. After he went through season, because we had a late start with his age
Hmm.
group, um, by the time he would come back for the next season,
Hmm.
um, it was time for those boys to pull out all the stops because they were going to be in a place where they were going to be on someone's radar for high school.
Scouting. Yeah.
Yep. And then on from high school, if you can't get into high school and get into any meaningful position and doing these things, then you can kiss off college and and the signs around the ball fields were like, there's not going to be any agents looking for your child. Your child is not going to become a major league ball player from playing these games, and stop asking coach if your child can go into play. All these signs were everywhere, but yet there was so many parents that were pressing their coaches to put their kids in a lineup. And I never did that with your brother. And your brother came to this on his own. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
season, he said, Mom, he goes, I love baseball. And he's good at it. He was
Hmm.
really good at it. He says, but I want to play because I love the game, not
Yeah.
because I want to be a major league ball player. I don't care about
Yeah.
that, Mom. I want to play. I want to play with other people who want to play baseball because they love the game and not because they want to win.
Right.
They just want to play the game. And because they don't do that, because there's such a pressure that you have to win, 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 I don't want to play anymore.
Hmm.
And one could say, well, then he's just being a chicken shit because he doesn't like competition. No,
Hmm.
not everything has to be about competition.
Right.
You can do
Yeah.
something because you love to do it and you love the details associated with it. And
Yep.
so that the fact that he came to that conclusion on his own, and he said, this isn't for me. I'm not going to be one of those ball players that has to produce XYZ for this outcome, because that outcome isn't what I wanted. I just want to play. And nobody
Right.
on my team wants to play to play. So he would
Yeah.
have
It's
been that perfect kid in the Sandlot movie that would just go out in a decrepit place in the park to play ball. And he would have played until the lights went on in the streets, and then he'd have come home all dirty and happy because all he wanted to do was play ball.
right.
And so homeschooling gave him that independence. But when you're in
Yeah.
grade school and in junior high, these extra games, these leagues are attached to
Hmm.
those schools in many ways. And so there's always that you've got to achieve, you got to achieve, you got to go, you got to go. And
Hmm.
when does the kid really get a chance to? They get so embraced and in their head brainwashed into the ideology of winning and meeting that mark as a team, which teamwork is good. Working as a team is good. That's not bad. But when that's all you are as a machine, then
Hmm.
how does a child get enriched from the experience? The only high they get is when they win. The only accolades, the
Yeah.
only value they have is when they win. It had nothing to do with anything else, but they're moving forward and achieving and winning and winning and winning. And that's all their value is.
Well, also to that point, sometimes I think the kids get on they get on the train and the wheels are spinning and they don't even know. And
That's
they're
right.
playing to a certain end with a certain amount of competition and skill and all this stuff. And then they're getting led around by their nose unintentionally, intentionally, whatever, by the system, by their parents, by the coaches, whoever it is. and then they're getting led down a path they may not even want and not even know that they have a choice to leave. That
Their
happens too.
value is, yes, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that was it.
Their value is more. Their
Mhm,
personal value is more than that game and what they might hope to gain from that as a team.
mhm,
There's many games um, that were played that probably weren't winning games for them, but they had good moments with their teammates.
mhm.
But all that
Yep,
doesn't matter because they didn't win that game. It's the
right.
same thing with tournament. Um, the pressure of putting you through tournament
Ugh,
wasn't because you were good enough to be. They wanted you to win because they wanted a trophy, because a
yeah,
trophy meant that their school was hot shit
succeeding.
and that they could possibly get more students for marketing. And I'm sorry, I'm not
Right.
pimping my kid for marketing. I'm not going to pay for a tournament so you can get a participation trophy for showing up. I'm not paying for that stupid ass trophy that costs nothing. Okay.
Yep.
And then you get nothing for it because it's not something you were feeling. Maybe that makes me a hippie. I don't know. Screw them if that is the way. I don't
Well, but I
care. I
also
want you to, if I pay $500 a month for you to achieve and go to class and get all of those enrichments, that physical fitness, the coordination, working with other people, other karate students, meeting the standards in that curriculum, being held accountable for all of those things. If I'm
mhm,
paying for that and it's making you a better person, you're not defined by tournament. I'll be hanged for that. No,
mhm,
you count because every day you're showing up. And if that makes me a hippie, screw it. I
so
don't
be
care.
it, right?
I don't care.
No, and I think that's the right perspective though, because in the end, even with me especially, I wanted to go the teaching route, not the performing route. So
Yeah.
I ended up being a junior instructor and damn near almost attended their academy and did all that. And I'm
Mhm.
glad I didn't because hindsight 2020 with that, knowing the school that I'm at now and the difference between us and them, and wow, it's night and day. So very glad I didn't sign on to that franchise. But I digress. That was a lot
Sorry.
for martial arts. No, it was good. It was good. I That's all very relevant because it speaks to again the flexibility and the freedom of breaking the mold and doing what you felt what there I'm starting to realize as we're having this conversation, you were able to really exercise the moral high ground, if you would, in many aspects of our life all simultaneously. And that probably taught me a lot of lessons as a kid that I didn't realize I was learning. And that's pretty cool. Something that you don't necessarily get from the traditional school system and
You
that
have
life
no
that
idea
accompanies it.
yes, the arguments I had with, I'm not going to say his name, but Sensei in the office while the other Sensei was teaching you. He and
I
I
bet.
were I was arguing with Sensei in the office about
Mhm.
why I'm not going to put you in tournament
Yeah.
and I'm not paying
Well,
his marketing deal.
not to mention their tournaments were so biased, like, it was ridiculous.
It
It was so
was,
stupid.
and I
But that's
threw that
beside
in
the
his
point.
face too.
That's beside the point. I wanna back it up because 'cause we've been talking about
Yes.
martial arts, but,
Sorry.
let's back it up to one last relevant point for the schooling aspect of homeschooling, to because you brought Josh into the mix, so let's add him in.
Hmm.
When I was in college, I believe, when I was in college, he was coming up through grade school, and you started to notice a shift in how they
Hmm.
taught the core subjects,
Hmm.
mostly the STEM leaning type stuff. What was that shift that you started to see? How old was he, and how did it affect his learning?
Well, so he was in second grade, and I
Okay.
noticed that when we went in, and of course, I had him in CHEP because I knew
Mhm,
that model and I was comfortable. Same teacher, master teacher that brought you up, saw
mhm.
him, from infancy until, you know.
Yeah,
So
quite
there's
literally.
value to that. There's value in having one teacher take your child through every
There is.
year instead of being handed off to another. But
Absolutely.
the sadly, Common Core came into play, and it was I disagreed with Common Core.
Mhm.
So it came in into mathematics, into arithmetic, and your dad and I were 100% against it. And unfortunately, that's the way California was going with their textbooks. And I looked into some private schools within the state, within the county, and every time I spoke with the faculty. Yes, there is Common Core. Yes, there is Common Core. And your dad and I just would not compromise with that. It did not make sense to us. And it was very particularly difficult for your dad to take, because as math progressed and into the arithmetic, into, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade,
Pre-algebra,
pre-algebra and
algebra,
things like that,
geometry.
he
Yeah.
he was so and
Mhm.
I respect it. He was so adamant about how do you take English and mix that
Mhm.
in with mathematics. It doesn't belong in.
Oh, yeah, but let's pause real quick. My dad used to be an aerospace engineer. He used to work
Mhm,
for Boeing. He lived in the world of calculus for all of his days.
mhm,
So that was among other things, but like so my
mhm,
dad did math for a living. Like it was very
mhm,
relevant. And not to bash on you, but like when you went through school, your math
mhm.
skills sort of dwindled. Correct me if I'm wrong. Around freshman, is that right?
So I love arithmetic.
Yes.
Higher math, forget it. That was your
Right.
dad's deal. Okay.
Yeah.
So I can teach you all of those things: fractions, multiplication, division, decimals, all that. That's not a
Decimals. Yeah. Yeah.
problem.
Hmm.
And I enjoyed that because I had a grandmother that was very patient with me and brought me through on
Hmm.
her mathematics. Okay. I'm not going to lie,
Hmm.
because let me pause for a minute. The
Go
the
for it.
arithmetic that I learned in school was taught differently than when
Hmm.
she was learned. I was taught her way.
Hmm.
So, and I'll be specific, like borrowing and
Hmm.
carrying and multiplication with multiple numbers. Okay.
Right.
Like,
2 and 3
like,
digits with
like four
other
digits
2.
across and four digits
Yeah.
below and things like that, and ordering them. So she learned one way. But my schoolwork, when I would bring it home and I would be like, I don't know how to do this, she'd be like, I don't really like how they're teaching you. So you're going to learn my way and then you'll be happy. And that's how it happened. And I was able to function. And the teacher that I had, the teachers accepted it. They didn't fight me because the end result was appropriate and I was doing okay in math. This Common Core thing wasn't going to happen. And so what I did, a lot of it was teach you and your brother in the way that my grandmother taught me. Okay. So she was the
Mm,
greatest generation.
that's
Okay.
cool.
You want to name generations. She was the greatest. Okay. I'm Gen X.
Mhm,
So greatest generation skipped and went into Gen X. Gen X is teaching you
mhm.
and your generation. And you're like
Z.
millennial
I'm Z.
X. Are you? I'm not,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, not X, you're Z. I thought
Yeah.
you're on the cusp of Z and millennial.
Yeah, but I'm on the cusp on the Z side by a couple years. Like it's
But it all matters. And people go, what does that matter? Well, it matters because when again you have school boards picking textbooks that were
yes.
designed at the state level by individual educators with degrees and PhDs that think they know everything, and they really don't. Um, and they organize the data, put it into a textbook, give the school boards choices, and they're
Right.
assembled in that way. The end user, which is the student, has to do what they're told, and they
Yeah.
take in what's in those textbooks. So it's almost like a poison that just drips down. It's
Yeah.
terrible. And that's how I saw it. So Common Core was not an option. And that was what was infiltrating all of the textbooks when your brother was coming up. And
Mhm,
so the only thing I could do was go out of state. And so I looked
mm.
for online programs, and your brother was educated through the textbooks that came from the state of Florida
Oh,
because
wow.
they didn't have Common Core. And I might add, it was a private school that was a Christian school. So
Mhm,
it was Christ based, but it was the same uh, same arithmetic that
mhm.
anybody in a school district in the state of Florida would have. No Common Core at that time.
Can
So
you and I didn't ever experience Common Core, so I don't know what it looks like. Do you remember it at all? Like, can you give an example? Or if not, that's okay. It was a long time ago.
I can't even, not without a piece of paper. But what
Oh,
they
that's okay.
did
Yeah.
was they at the second grade level and at the first grade level, because this is what we were finding. And then we skipped out of it. So I don't have knowledge of
Yeah.
higher stuff because I wasn't in it. But
Yeah.
what we were seeing was the idea of integrating sentences, language arts, grammar into combining. That's why it's Common Core, bringing in mathematics and English or grammar, language arts,
Right.
combining the two so that the child can have multifacets of being able to use
Mm.
arithmetic to actually write a sentence. And it was ridiculous. They do not belong together. And
Yeah,
most
that's
of the time, it pisses parents off. And
yeah.
so my heart goes out to people during COVID that had to homeschool their kids if they have Common Core, because if
Yeah.
they didn't learn Common Core in their upcoming, they're not going to understand it unless they go through a class with a teacher that says this is how the state has given us, because the teachers are given lots and lots of information on how to teach it so
Hmm.
that they can disseminate it through the students so the students can then test properly at the state level. When the states want all this
Right.
information, they want to know what's coming out of the students. Are the students meeting the math levels, the reading levels, and blah, blah, blah. They want to
Hmm.
know that. So the teacher, when they get the curriculum, they've got to take it in and spit it out and disseminate it so the student can take it, incubate on it, and then produce. And that's
Right.
tough.
Well, not only is it tough, I would argue it's not working. You know,
It's not
this will
working.
be a brief tangent, but the literacy and math rates across the country now, it's more than half on average are on some level illiterate and can't do basic math, and it's insane. And they
Well,
wonder why. And I'm sure I'm just, thinking out loud here. I'm just whatever, but I think Common Core probably has something to do with that
oh,
and
I'm certain
many
of it.
other things. I
I'm
can't
certain of it.
imagine a first grader or a second grader who, by the way, is still learning how to read. Are we going to forget that?
Mhm.
Like you don't know how to read until you're probably about 5th or 6th grade. Like let's be real about that. Like
Comprehension
proficient.
is the key part.
Exactly, and that's why I
Mhm.
say that's yeah, so, like, reading at a word level versus a sentence versus a whole, and then having an outsider's perspective forming an opinion, I would gather all of that as reading because it doesn't do you any good to read words on a page and be able to say them out loud but not know what they mean, so, when
Right.
I say that you don't learn to read until you're truly about, like, probably 5th or 6th grade, that's why,
Yeah.
and trying to incorporate language into math sounds like a beast in 1st grade, like, why the hell would you even do that? Doesn't make any sense. But
Yeah.
I digress. That's
No,
anyway.
it's true. And well, and to your point, I had a major fear that see, I didn't really learn how to write until I was in at the university. And
Mm.
I had an English teacher, professor, I should say, who literally spoke in grammar. She would
Oh,
speak her
yeah.
sentences. You know, she would
Yeah, yeah,
use the
yeah.
word period or exclamation point, semicolon. I
Comma.
mean, she literally, as she spoke to us, she said those things. And because she was trying to, and I can't even, and she spoke quickly, period,
Mhm.
capital, because, comma, it was
Yeah,
important, exclamation point. And so as she was doing that,
that's so funny.
it sort of, I was like, wow, we can write how we talk and how we speak to one another. And she had a big book, which I still have today. I made a notebook out of it, and it had just pure grammar, which I didn't have
Mm.
all through my K-12 experience. And once that happened, the lights just went on and I was able to write. And it was
Mhm,
very, very satisfying for me to be able to write, because before I really didn't understand how
mhm.
essays, and it just, oh, it was a chore.
Yeah.
She opened that up, she unclogged that. Now, I had that fear that that would happen to you
Mm.
and your brother.
Yeah.
And a master teacher told me, and again, I was really anxious about it. And they said, The more your child reads, the more they will be able to write.
Mhm.
And I didn't understand that in the beginning. I was still not trusting that process. And she just broke it down and she says, they will see it. They will
Mhm.
feel it. They will experience through literature how to conjugate a verb, how to understand
Yep.
about prepositions and every other thing, all these important components to being able to write. And
Mhm.
so I was like, oh, please read,
Oh,
because
and
I didn't want you to have any potholes, you know, please
I
read.
would actually say reading was the one thing, maybe not when I was younger, like 5, 6, 7. I don't know about that, but after about age 8 or 9, I was like, you could hardly get me to put a book down. I remember sometimes you would send me to my room, but you had to take the books away because I was happy to go to my room because I could go read books if I was in trouble.
You're like, whatever.
I remember that vividly as a kid.
Yeah.
So we check the box there, no issues, for sure. Um, Man, that's it's so good. There's so much that we covered about homeschooling. Is there anything that we missed? Anything that, people who either haven't homeschooled kids or have hated it and are interested in different perspective, or like did we hit all the things? Is there anything missing from the picture of homeschooling?
I think we did. I think that from a mother point of view, it was as much as I wanted to tear my hair out and scream and find some tequila sometimes or a rum and coke, Captain Coke. Not kidding. Um, it was, looking back, it was the best thing I ever did, and I have no regrets. My greatest fears were that you did, or your
Mhm.
brother did, because there was a while where you guys were angry and you were thinking the grass was greener.
Yeah.
But I keep thinking as time goes that maybe you'll see that you did fine.
Oh no, that time has come. Like that time is past. I think I jumped over that wall around age 20. Let's just put it like, geez, Navy. After the Navy, you know, I'd say that pretty much put it in perspective. The Navy puts a lot of things in perspective. Military life in general does that,
Yeah, I
but
can imagine.
yeah, I had no qualms with my upbringing as far as schooling goes. Uh, After
Oh,
that, it
okay.
was so evidently clear. Well, because and I've said this on the podcast with Brandon, you cross paths with so many different people, all education, socioeconomic standards, and
Hmm.
cultures and whatever. It's insane. Like you can't even. You have to experience it to really get a grasp of it. It's not a type of diversity that you would even see in a school system. It wouldn't
Right.
even matter if you went to like 4 or 5 different schools in different corners of the country. Like you still wouldn't get the amount of diversity. It's insane. There's
Hmm.
so much. Um, Having to deal with all those people, having to learn how to communicate, and also do what you have to do for yourself, and then the social aspect on the side when you're off work and navigating those waters, literally. Just it's there was absolutely nothing wrong with what kind of schooling I got when I was a kid, and it was actually probably better in most circumstances.
I loved it because everything was a lesson.
Hmm.
And I can't say that enough. The books were there. There was always that responsibility, um, and belonging to um, an institution like CHEP, an independent study program, where I was held accountable as a parent to produce documentation that gave you 19 to 23 days of school a month.
Hmm.
That was a good training for me, so that when we went off grid, I still had standards,
Right.
because
Yeah.
there was an indoctrination about that and how important
Hmm.
that was. But then at the same time, when we went off grid completely, I was relieved, because again, our whole lives, everything was a lesson. Making marshmallows in the kitchen was a science experiment, but then you were also learning to cook.
Oh yeah.
So,
Right.
you
Man,
know,
actually, let's briefly wrap it up with that because those were fun. I'll let's just do some back and forth because I remember a few that stood out to me. The most major one being I was able to vote in Obama's election back in
yes,
2008,
yes,
like actually vote.
yes.
And I could explain it. Correct me if I get anything wrong or if I miss anything important, but basically I was, God, however
You were
however
in
old I
sixth
was in
grade.
2008. Sixth
You were in
grade?
sixth
Okay,
grade.
so maybe like 10 or so, something like that. And the election was coming up, and I remember in those history textbooks that I had, it was relevant at that time. We were kind of learning about the different branches of government, how they all worked, how an election worked, this and that. And so, because we were in an election year, you decided to make it a history lesson and go participate and go through all this stuff. And so, but not in a way that you've mentioned that I don't have an experience about, but like how you do like mock voting in schools or whatever. You're like, oh, I voted for this person. You could explain that a little bit better than I could. But I actually had to sit in the living room and watch the news, and I watched the debates. And when I didn't understand what was going on, which was 90% of the time because I was 10, I would ask questions. What are they talking about? Welfare systems. What are they talking about? Like affordable care. What are they talking about? Whatever war was going on. What are they talking about? Social security. What are they talking about? Green stuff, like
Mhm.
solar. What is all this? Like all these things, like politics at age 10. It was nuts. So there was a lot of exploring in that realm. And then I distinctly remember, doing research on the internet, listening to these debates, trying to read up on the process of voting, how it works with the different, what are they, propositions, right? Prop, whatever. So that goes with, you're not just voting for the candidate. It's like there's all this other shit in the ballot too. And then that changes by state. And it's a lot for a 10-year-old. But I remember walking away with the practice ballot or the one that they send you, the mail in ballot, reading all this stuff, and then being like, how am I supposed to make a decision? This isn't like, I don't feel like I have enough information to make a decision because these people are just saying things on TV, but then I have this other stuff in front of me, and the text is so small that my 10-year-old eyes can hardly even read it, even though I had 20/20 vision. And I was like, how am I supposed to do this? And then you just sat there and went, yup. I remember that so vividly. And so I was very distrusting of the system, I think, at that point, starting at age 10. It's like, no, you really have to do the work yourself. Don't just follow the crowds with whatever. Like, this is a task. And so then I remember making all the choices in the ballot. And then I remember we had issues walking into the voting booth because you're not supposed to like let someone else do it for you or whatever. And so you had to be like, she just wants to push the buttons, or
No,
something like that. But
yeah, well, actually, I almost got into a fight with that lady.
I know. Wait, tell that story. Tell that story. That's cool.
No, it was just, so there's no law at the time when we were there voting
Hmm.
in that particular election year in Orange County. There was no law in the state of California that said your child couldn't go into a voting booth with you. And we
Hmm.
always voted as a family. That was it, because we wanted to show the responsibility of voting and the privilege of voting. It was a
Yeah.
rite of passage for everybody who
Hmm.
was a citizen, something that, you can't, unless you're a felon, it won't be taken away from you. It's part of
Hmm.
the joy of being a citizen. And
Right.
so we walked in, and you had worked very hard on that ballot.
Hmm.
And the reason why I had you vote was because you were a professional child and you were taxed as an actor at the highest rate. So
Yep.
that was truly, this is a whole other topic, but
That's okay.
taxation without
Yep.
representation, because the
Right.
federal government and the state took the highest they could from you
Hmm.
as a child. Which I kind of feel like that sucks, but that's just the way the structure was. And so I thought, well, you know what? All your years of working, and you even have a little pension thing going, I'm going to give up my vote to my daughter. And this was a
Hmm.
perfect learning opportunity. Um, you were old enough to read
Hmm.
and take stuff in and all those things that you just said that you did. And so I said to you, I'm going to give you my vote, and I expect you to use it responsibly. And you'll do what you need to do, and whatever your decision, I accept, because this is your
Hmm.
vote. I'm not going to sit here and helicopter over you after I've given up my right to vote to my daughter,
Hmm.
who was taxed with no voice. That made me feel good that I was sharing with you. And so you worked hard on that and you got everything how you wanted it. And I'll be hanged if some bitch at the center would tell me that I can't bring my daughter in. I'm sorry, it ain't going to happen. So, we walked in and you had your papers and you were quiet. We were well dressed and very, we didn't do anything wrong. The only thing
Mm-hmm.
that we did that was a little weird to that lady's mind was that you and I walked into the voting booth area together.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? You're a minor. You're in with me. You literally stood in front of me and I was wrapped around you. You stood.
Yeah.
You weren't looking at someone else's paper. We were behind a black
Yeah.
curtain and she was like, and I looked through and I'm like, back off, back off. My child is going to learn. She's going to push the buttons. This is my ballot, my life. You get away. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, well, that's again, no, there's no rule. There's no law. I'm not going to have this discussion with you. If we have to have any further talk, it'll be with the police department. Get away. And she was like, and I was like, bye. And so then, no, I really irked.
No, I love it. I love it.
And so then you went in and I guided you, made sure that you were understanding the machine. And it didn't take long for you to figure out how to do this machine in California. And it was that. So, shoot, if an illegal can vote.
Yeah.
The same.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop.
Sad state of the world today. No, yeah, for real. So that was one. That was a really good one. Were there any other life projects that doubled as school projects that you could think of that stood out to you?
Well, I liked Where the Wild Things Are. You made a diorama.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was a little book report diorama thing. Yeah, that was cool, I guess. Yeah.
And you had to make it stand out. You liked art, and we went to the art store and we found, construction or pieces of papers that suited you for doing the diorama and cutting out all the characters for Where the Wild Things Were. And that was neat, and there was no timeline. You can work on it. And so I enjoyed that aspect of it. There's many moments. I liked when we had a big refrigerator box and you and your brother made a big house out of it, and it stayed in our family room for like almost, I don't want to say, gosh, at least 2 weeks.
I don't remember that.
Yep. And you guys cut out windows and you made your own house within our family room out of this big box. And you brought in all your books and all your things, and he did too. And you guys watched television through the windows and the doors. And I don't know, I guess I am a hippie. I don't know, bohemian. I don't know. It was fun.
That's funny. I think another good one, maybe the last one, the Disneyland project. That was cool. I don't remember why we started doing that one though. Do you remember why we did the Disney project?
Yeah. Because the curriculum in the school that we were in at the time was talking about transportation and past, present, and future, to teach concepts about the Industrial Revolution at a very, very, very young age.
Okay.
Going from a horse-drawn carriage to all of a sudden an automobile, and then something space age. And so we happen to have Disneyland passes as a family. And so I thought, well, rather than looking at pictures in a textbook, let's go to Disneyland. And so there were parts in the park where there were tables and chairs and things like that. And we did a lot of your schoolwork there. I threw stuff in the stroller and off we went. And we studied the transportation aspect of Disneyland from their point of view through the eyes of Walt Disney, and spent the day at Disneyland. I mean, how cool is that to be able to have school at Disneyland?
Yeah, no,
In my
very
head,
cool.
I was like,
I
"Shoot, I'd love to have done that," when I was in 1st grade,
right?
So,
Well,
we
but
started
that's
out, you saw the horses
mhm,
and you got to pet them and they were kind and we got on the car and we went around. And then there was another car that was, from the turn of the century with the big bulb honk honk,
mhm,
so we got to ride that one. And
the
they're
trolley system.
all authentic. I'm sorry.
The trolley system too.
And so we
Train.
got to do that, and we went into the firehouse and we looked at turn of the
Yeah,
century fire equipment and how they had to make things go. And then we looked at the future. We went into
Tomorrowland.
Tomorrowland, and we looked
Yeah,
at what Walt Disney thought of at that time that was futuristic. And you wrote in
that's so cool.
Autopia, and you got to it's it steers in its way.
Yeah,
Everybody knows what Autopia is, and so, but
right.
the point is, you got to do it, and you got to see the progression of transportation and how important science was, and innovation, and the Industrial Revolution, and getting away from horses, and then getting a little speed and horsepower. Just things went on and on and on. So it was kind of fun.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't remember any of that being the point. Like, I just don't have a lot of recollection about it. I remember having to write about it, and I
Yeah,
do remember going through and looking at all the different, like, cars and stuff. I had forgotten the details and the purpose, but wow, what a in hindsight, what a beautiful symbolic way to experience Disneyland in a way that I'd
it
forgotten as
was
an adult. Like,
fun.
that's to go to Disneyland as a kid and have your parent challenge your perspective to look at it as an through the evolution lens, as far as, like, the the modernization of society, essentially, seeing the old school transportation and getting more modern, even if it's just a stupid ride and the monorail and, like, all this, like,
Mhm.
that's a lot for a kid. I didn't appreciate it till this second that you retold that story because 1, I forgot, and 2, like, wow, that's a lot. That's super
Well,
cool.
it's cool because in the very end, when you boil it down, the one of the macro things to take away would be this was a man's dream that he made a
Yeah,
reality.
mhm,
And they always say, well, you put your mind to it, you can do anything. Well, he did. He put his mind to it and he
quite
did
literally,
something.
yeah, mhm.
And then we got to experience it. And then we did our own little thing within his world that he created. So it was a special time for me. Um, I don't regret it. And having you kids with me 24/7 was uh, amazing. That was a gift. It was a gift. Even when I had to go to the bathroom and you guys were passing notes under the door. I just
Yep.
like really, or the time I, open the door that I'm sitting there and the dog jumps up on my lap. So I'm trying to go to the
Oh my goodness.
bathroom. I know this is probably TMI. I don't
No,
care.
that's fine.
Um, Sitting on the pot and there's the dog on me, Tux is on me. You're trying to yell at your brother. Your brother's yelling at you. You guys are fighting over the remote. And I have to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, you
Oh,
guys. And okay, I'm going to tell you. You know how you do you remember how I cleared you guys out?
no, but I'm nervous.
I said, all
Go
right,
ahead.
I'm gonna fart. And you guys
Yes. Yep,
scattered.
I figured. Oh, always with the
Oh,
toilet humor in the household. That was a staple.
sorry.
Always.
We have a toilet humor family. I don't care.
That's great. No, I love it. I do remember that now. Yeah. That's funny. This has been such a cool talk. I
Same.
think we covered a lot about homeschooling and parenting and lifestyle and the symbolic lessons that you can teach your children through many different avenues that aren't obvious to everybody. So I thought that was pretty cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing with me. Thank you for the
Yeah.
invitation. It was fun. Hope we can do it again. Love to
Oh
be
yeah.
with Brendan too.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, we'll probably have to do. I'm not sure how 3 would look on here. There's probably a setting for it, but yeah, that'd be fun for sure.
Yay. All right. Well, thank
If we were
you.
gonna have you back, what would you want to talk about besides? I think we didn't
Woo.
exhaust homeschooling. There's so much, but like, oh my god, what would you like to come back and talk about next?
Oh man. Gosh, people in their 20s.
Oh, okay. That sounds that there we go. That's a chapter. I like it.
Only if
Let's
I can bring my Medea with me.
of course. Yeah. All right,
All
let's put
right.
a pin in it for the people who are in their 20s. Get ready. Hopefully, we will be back on schedule with Brandon here in the next couple weeks, and maybe not. If not, well, maybe we'll squeeze in that 20-year-old lesson in here with my mom. But thank you guys for listening, and we appreciate your time and attention. And mom, thank you for being on with us.
Thank you. Loved being there.
Have a good night, guys.